going on? So, want to talk about God of War. We have an impression, leaked footage. Now the leaked footage is no longer leaked footage. We understand that the game has gone gold as of today. Great update. And the game is launching April 20th. So today we want to talk about God of War, what we're expecting, what are some of the little nuggets that we saw from the gameplay that was leaked, and as well some of the footage that has come out from Sony showing the latest combat and the interaction between Kratos and his son Atreus. We want to talk about that and much more in this latest video. All right. So, God of War, April 20th, it's on, it's coming. The game has gone gold. We're excited about that. In fact, let me answer this quick question. Someone asked me recently, so Derek, we always hear about games going gold. What does that actually mean? So, when a game goes gold, the gold mastered copy version of the game, or which is the best version of the game, is the version that will be published. Okay, that's the version that will be basically the remaster. Okay, there's a remaster version, and then that remaster version basically is sent to the factory, if you will, to then push out those retail versions of the game to retailer stores. And that remaster version as well, from a digital standpoint, is uploaded to, because this is a PlayStation 4 exclusive, will be uploaded to the PlayStation digital store. Okay, so that's what going gold means. So that means that there will be no delays with the game. The game is officially launching on April 20th. I am personally truly excited for God of War, but of course when we review games, regardless of our bias, we definitely have to be critical and hoping that the game is as good as we hope it to be. But so the footage has come out, leaked footage. That's no longer leaked footage. It's official footage of the game running. They've not talked about, Sony Santa Monica that is, they've not really talked about the certain particulars of the visuals, such as, is the game running at 60 frames per second. Recently, however, Digital Founders did a little run through with the game, and they found that the game was running in 4K, dynamic 4K, that is, checkerboard rendering at the 4K output. They said that during their testing, they saw some checkerboard artifacts that supported the 4K resolution dynamically, and that the game looks fantastic. I mean, we're looking at compressed footage online, and it looks fabulous. Okay, so I'm thinking we're going to get an experience from a visual standpoint very similar to that of Horizon Zero Dawn, which was another PS4 exclusive that blew our minds when that came out in February of last year. But with God of War, one of the things that really stood out from looking at this latest footage and being excited about the game coming out April 20th is the combat. You know, if you're a fan of God of War, there's a certain essence about Kratos that I won't say no other protagonist gives you, but for me personally, you know, playing God of War 1, 2, 3, you know, all of them, there was something about wielding the blades of chaos and other blades or other weapons that he would acquire on his journey, but it was something about those blades of chaos that with his inner turmoil and rage that made for a magical combative experience. And so, you know, in fact, when you look at the combat of God of War, it is actually a character all its own, because it's so critical to the experience. And so I was really excited to hear the new God of War 2018, the one that's coming out, the game's lead designer, combat designer that is, when he explained that it's still the same essence of God of War when you're fighting with Kratos. No, his son Atreus does not get in his way. You still wield Kratos, and you feel that empowering experience. But now he's using an axe called the Leviathan. And if you've seen the footage, I'm sure all of you have seen the footage. It's an axe that acts very similar to Thor's hammer, in which he can recall it back to him. He can throw it, and it's phenomenal, right? He can hack a guy to pieces, throw it. It can impale a guy. He can use his shield, beat guys up, call his axe back to him. I mean, they're going over the top. And one of the things that really stands out to me with the combat is how deliberate it feels. Now, the previous God of Wars, their combat system was brilliant. However, it didn't feel as deliberate as this new one. This new God of War really has a purposeful aim in the combat, making for, I would say, more of an empowering experience. I don't know how you're going to be more empowering to the player over the previous God of Wars, but we shall see. So it feels like there's this, like the game, it still maintains that old school God of War flair with Kratos, of course, with his lust for brutality when he's fighting. But of course, in this God of War, Kratos seems, he's more calm. He's more there's a process of thought behind his motives, because of course he's leading his son to this unknown destiny, or destination, if you will, along this journey. And that's one of the things that I have questions about. I'm excited to jump into the game again on April 20th. But again, the combat looks fantastic in this new God of War. Let me see. I was looking at some of the things about the combat that made me say, wow. So with the shield that Kratos has, he's not running around like a Roman soldier who you always see the shield in hand. In fact, when he wields his Leviathan axe, the shield, if you are holding the shield, as you've seen in the videos, it actually retracts. Okay, so the shield almost like goes invisible, retracts, and Kratos' left hand, or whichever hand that he's not wielding the axe with, he uses it, you know, to punch enemies, to then retract the shield, to use it as a shield, and he can use his shield as a formidable weapon. Well, there seems to be this really cool partnering element of sorts, which goes beyond the intense combat sequences as well, which is supported by Kratos and his son Atreus. So when you watch the videos, you'll notice, sure, there's combative scenes where the combat takes some time. Like, you'll be in a sequence with your son playing as Kratos, and Atreus, your son, he doesn't get in Kratos' way, which I really appreciate them doing that. He feels like the perfect tag team partner in which you still can take on all the enemies, yet he doesn't seem like that sidekick that gets in your way. He's always to the side, because he is a more vulnerable character, of course. So they have you as Kratos, you know, punishing all the enemies, which I appreciate, because that's the experience. That's what you want. You play the game for Kratos. However, there's this coming of age experience that's running along this awesome story. Hopefully, an awesome story. But again, there's also this I sense this this partnering sequence between he and his son, where sure, Kratos is strong enough to take out all the enemies that come their way, but then again, if you notice, there was these, or one in particular, this location where Kratos seems out of sorts. Sort of as though he can't speak the language, or he can't decipher that which is the barrier in front of them. Most times there's a barrier, it's an enemy. When you play a God of War games, no enemy can stand in front of Kratos, okay? But when it's something that's more intellectually involving, then you notice the son, he's the one who deciphers and reads and figures things out, because I believe there was a quote earlier in some of the trailers where the son mentions that his mother taught him these things. And so I'm really intrigued by this story and where it's going to go, because it seems as though, sure, Kratos in all of his might can get them far, but only so far. And just as much as the son needs Kratos, it seems that Kratos needs his son as much as well. That's a whole new dynamic to this series. Kratos needs no one's help, right? If he can't get through it, he tears it down somehow. You know, he'll cut somebody's wings off and fly over it. I mean, Kratos was by any means necessary. However, his personality is seemingly toned down for this new God of War experience coming April 20th. I keep saying April 20th because I'm hoping you mark your calendar. And for some of you fans out there, I'm sure you don't need to mark your calendars. But I'm excited about where they're gonna go with the story, and how it's going to mature. In fact, I'll go as far as to say this. For this God of War, because as God of War fans, we've taken in so much of the Kratos experience. Sure, it is truly delightful and heartwarming to see Kratos in this new in this narrative that tones him down. He's more of a thinking man than this just force of havoc. He's a thinking man. And so I want to see how they evolve him in that fashion. But more importantly, I really am interested in what happens with his son. That relationship between the two of them and what happens. I mean, as far as we know, I hope Sony Santa Monica doesn't do this to us. But what if his son does die? I mean, that might send him back into a crazy rage. I hope that's not the case for Kratos' sake. However, his son is a demigod because his father is a demigod, so I would assume that the son would have his father's abilities. And so I'm really excited about where they take the series. When you look at the combat, it's interesting how they've also evolved the combat. So in some of the sequences, you will notice where Kratos is fighting, there's this invisible, slight visible enemy indicator. And the enemy indicator is like this arrow that points from his waist towards these random directions. And so, of course, upon more questions being asked of Sony Santa Monica, we find out that that's an enemy indicator. So those enemy indicators, when it's yellow, it indicates that there is an enemy in that direction that the indicator is pointing, but the enemy does not know of your whereabouts at the time. You just know that there's an enemy in that particular direction when the indicator is yellow. When the indicator, I believe, is red, that means that the enemy in that direction is coming towards you. He's attacking. That enemy is attacking you when the indicator is red. And when the indicator, of course, is purple, it means that there's a projectile that's being shot at you from that particular direction. So if you watch some of the combative sequences and you remember what I'm telling you about this indicator, if you watch the videos today, you'll see how who's ever playing the game, they're able to be elusive and not take on that much punishment because they're able to see the indicator and they know what the indicator means. It's flashing purple to the right. Okay, they may move backwards, they may straight to the left, roll out of the way. So it gives you, the game does have this real stylish type of maneuverability, straightening left and right to evade opponents or whatnot. So I found that to be really cool. I haven't got a chance to get my hands on the game, but I will, and I can't wait to see how that feels. There has not been a Kratos, or excuse me, God of War game yet that has had lackluster combat. Not one. I mean, most people say that God of War Ascension was the least favorite in the series, but it didn't take away from the combat. God of War has some of the best combat experiences, hand-to-hand combat experiences of any game ever made. I'm not saying it's the absolute best. To many it is, but it is definitely at the top of the food chain. There's never been a God of War game that failed to offer great combat. Now, one of the things I thought was fascinating too about the combat was when you look at this indicator and it's telling you where enemies are. It's telling you the enemies are attacking from this direction or whatnot, and then it tells you that projectiles are flying here and there. As you're playing the game and you're reading this indicator and you're engaging the enemy yourself as Kratos, I thought it was fascinating how Sony Santa Monica has incorporated the son's combative flair with Kratos. There was a sequence in the video that lasted a pretty lengthy time, and I thought that was pretty cool because it wasn't like you are doing this long traversal system or traversal progress in the game and then you get these bite-sized combat experiences. It seems like when the combat happens, you're in it, man, and you really have to be on your toes as you take in all the enemies, because it seems like they're throwing the whole kitchen sink at you. And I think as you continue on in the game, like most God of War games, it becomes more arduous, it becomes more difficult, it becomes more challenging as you are upgrading and leveling up as well. And I'll talk about more of that for the new God of War. But again, with Atreus fighting alongside Kratos, I love those sequences. I don't know if this for sure, many of you may know this already, but correct me if I'm wrong in the comments below. There seems to be this synchronized type of combative experience between Kratos and his son, where the son, of course, he has the bow and arrow, but there are also sequences where the son would literally jump on enemies. While Kratos was taking out this enemy over here, Kratos would then throw his axe and hit the enemy on the head, that same enemy that his son was on his neck. The son would break the guy's neck, jump off, and it seemed to have this harmony of sorts where you control that, or maybe it's AI induced, where it just kind of triggers at certain times based on your movement. I don't know exactly, but man, it was fascinating. I'm like, wow, that looks fantastic. It really played out well, and it looks like it's going to be addictive gameplay, right? One question I have is, will the Leviathan axe be the only weapon that Kratos wields? Now, from history, the Blades of Chaos, though they were my favorite weapons, I loved the inclusion of other weapons. I really did. Of course, I always go back to the Blades of Chaos. They weren't called the Blade. They were, I think Athena gave you some blades of, I forget the name of those blades. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I forget the name of those blades, but they were blades like the Blades of Chaos in God of War 3. Again, they were wielded like the Blades of Chaos, but you still had other weapons. I hope that in this you have another weapon other than the axe. However, the axe does have, there are HP attributes in this new God of War. There's XP, and so you can upgrade. And speaking of upgrading, one of the things I thought was really cool was in the so-called leaked footage, you were able to see this sort of upgrade system. And the upgrade system upgraded the Leviathan axe, which again, as I stated before, it supports like these HP attributes. Now, the attributes were categorized by strength, runic, defense, or defense vitality, luck, and last but not least, cooldown. Now, those, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, those 5 attributes are attributed to the upgrading of everything in the game, such as Kratos' weapon, the son's weapon, the son's armor, as well as Kratos' armor. And I'm assuming that would be the same thing for other weapons in the game as well. But I thought it was really cool that you also saw like other armors that Kratos could put on that looks pretty stylish. And so I wonder if they offer some helmets, some cool helmets. That'd be really cool as well. So it'd be cool if you could play through the game. Very similar to Monster Hunter World, where you can pimp out your hunter as well as your little sidekick. That'll be great. I think it's really wonderful that they're taking God of War in this new reboot direction, and they're incorporating these RPG elements, which make it, more worthwhile. So I'm excited about the new God of War. Aside from the combat, I did want to mention or talk more about the visuals. I was asked a few questions recently about what I thought about the visuals, not having or not knowing prior to Digital Foundry talking about the resolution being 4K, running that checkerboard rendered dynamic 4K. Before that, I was asked about how I felt about the visuals, and of course I think they're gorgeous. But I heard as well that on the internet there were people that were complaining about the visuals, and that the visuals reminded them too much of, I believe the game is Rise, Son of Rome, which I thought was a really good game as well when it came out on the Xbox One. We need a sequel for that as well. We need a sequel for Rise, Son of Rome. However, my 2 cents on comparing Rise, Son of Rome's visuals to God of War, or saying that that's a negative for God of War, that's I don't want to offend anyone, but that's not, there's no there's no relation at all. Rise, Son of Rome was a beautiful game when it came out. It's gorgeous. It's still a beautiful game today. But God of War running on the PlayStation 4 Pro in particular looks fantastic. I don't want to discredit another game and say one game looks better than the other. God of War should look better than games that have come out before it on console. So I'm not going to waste my time with that. But again, we shouldn't downplay games we've not played yet. and we should not downplay something that looks so obviously fantastic. But like all games, you know, they still have to stand the test of our critical opinions when they come out. April 20th, we're excited about God of War. The game looks fantastic. We're loving the idea of this new tamed Kratos, who seems to be teaching his son how not to be like him and to channel his inner strength, his prowess and abilities in the way that's less harmful to his psyche, I guess. So I'm excited about God of War like you all are. So that was my, you know, little impression of what I've seen thus far on God of War. I'm assuming the game's going to be fantastic. As well, with all games that I personally review, I always go in with the glass full. When I go into a game, it's almost like that professor who, hey, when you start my class, everyone has an A+. And where you take this is up to you. So with God of War, I've never been disappointed with the God of War game. I would say that God of War Ascension was the least, my opinion as well, in the series, though I did like it. But I have high hopes for this God of War game. And so we shall see. And you guys, thanks for checking me out and checking out the channel. Please subscribe to the channel. We need your support. We appreciate it so much. And of course, April 20th, we definitely encourage you guys to pick up God of War. We will have our review out at that time. Till then, take care.
Yeah.